Hello, welcome to the June 26, 2026 Club Cubase livestream. My name is Greg Undo and I'm the host of the livestream today. If you have not attended a livestream before, how it works is you can ask questions in the live chat field, or these questions can be sent in advance by going to clubcubase@steinberg.de. So you could send questions if it's a little more involved, again, to clubcubase@steinberg.de. When asking questions, it's always helpful if you could indicate what version of the software you're using. So if it's with Cubase, you could say, I'm running Cubase LE, AI, Elements, Artist, or Pro. Also, which version number, so if it's version 13, 14, or 15. That information is helpful, as well as which operating system, so if you're running on Windows or Mac OS. All that information is helpful in helping to answer questions. We should have an index of all of the topics discussed in today's live stream pinned to the top of the comments field. So if you wanted to quickly navigate to particular topics, you could do that. And if you wanted to see topics that have been discussed in previous live streams, and we have over 45,000 topics and over 2,000 hours of live streams, you can go to cubaseindex.com, and we want to thank Jan from Stockholm for creating that website. Allows you to search and navigate directly to a video that's aligned with your topic. We also have two people that serve as moderators, Jazz Dude and Agent K. They are not Steinberg employees. They do it to make it a better community experience. So we'll give special thanks to them, and we'll give an extra round of gratitude for Jazz Dude for his work with the unofficial Cubase Nation Discord, which is a wonderful resource of information where you can download links, tutorials, and presets, logical editor, and project logical editor presets that are really. So it's a great site. It's a great site and source of information that's really beneficial to the Steinberg community. Once again, my name is Greg Undo. I work for Yamaha Corporation of America, and I primarily focus on Steinberg products. And I'm presenting in the United States, just outside of Washington, D.C., in Alexandria, Virginia. And if you're watching this live, please feel free to introduce yourself and tell us where you're from. One quick programming note, 1 week from today on July 3rd, that's a holiday for most of us in the United States for the 4th of July week holiday, so we won't be doing a live stream on next Friday. I'll be on holiday, so just a quick heads up with that. Next Tuesday will be the last live stream of the month, so we will have our typical 2-hour live stream followed by a Zoom social meetup, and this is a great place where people can meet other people, just a really casual Zoom meetup where people could talk to each other and other people can speak besides myself. They're always great, lively discussions. I look forward to them every month. So if you want to put that on your calendar, and we could include, if you want to email me in advance, I could generate the Zoom link for the invite. It's not recorded. We just kind of do it as a nice little service for people that are on the live streams. So it's a great way to kind of meet other people and great discussions. So we'll be doing that next Tuesday. I believe the date is June 30th. All right, so with that, we will go ahead and begin. All right, so we see Stefan joining from Sweden. We have Klaus joining from Malmo, Sweden as well. Tim K is Sabertooth Bicycle joining from Zeist in the Netherlands. His cat Buddy is waving a paw hello to waving hello from the floor in front of the air conditioner where it's humid and hot. It says feels like 110, but he's ready to learn. All right. Adam Langford is joining from the UK. I believe it's Bedfordshire, if my memory is correct. All right, we see Jazz Dude on. We have Uno Memento joining from Finland. All right, so we have Martin Bergner Guitar saying hello. All right, and we see Beverly Beatty So I know Martin Berger, Bergner Guitar had a question last week about kind of dynamic time stretching, and I think I sent an email. Not sure if I got a response yet, but let's take a look at it. So this may seem convoluted at first, but I think once you get this set up, you can let me know if this kind of makes sense for what you want to do, Martin. All right, so I believe what he wanted to do is to be able to take like maybe a portion of a MIDI event. So let's say we have half notes here for 2 measures. We have 4 measures of quarter notes, followed by 2 measures of half notes. So I believe what the question was to be able to take these particular like quarter notes in the middle of an event and maybe have the size and the length of those notes and maybe shift these notes over into space. So I think I made a macro with an additional Project Logical Editor preset. So we'll see if this makes sense for Martin's work use case. So if I want to do this, I'll just see if this macro works here. First, I will come over, let's get to the macros. So right now we see half notes before, so this is one event, and quarter notes and half notes, and I want to take each of these quarter notes and turn them into an eighth note, but also have that take half the space since we're leaving that. So with this macro I made, if I come over here, we say I just called it have MIDI in middle of an event. So if I run the macro, we can see that now the quarter notes have turned into eighth notes, and these have all shifted over. So I just kind of select the range with the range tool. Now to do that, I made one additional Project Logical Editor preset. So let's go to the Project Logical Editor. Let's go to our setup, and we will say, I think I saved it as a preset, be have. All right, so this is one logical editor preset, Project Logical Editor preset to make, and it's pretty simple to do. We want to choose in our action to transform, and then we want to say the property is set to events that are selected. So we're going to select that particular event with the range tool, and then we're going to take the length of that and divide it by 2. Now, in the big scheme of things, this is one part of a macro to make this all go very quickly. So let's come over to my key commands and let's look at the steps for the macro. So this seems like a lot. I'll just leave this open, and if you want to take screenshots of it so that you could recreate the macro, we could do that. But we want to, as a first step, we want to do the transport, and then we're going to choose the locators to selection. So that's going to put the left and right locators around our range selection. We're going to split that range. We're going to use the Logical Editor preset for double tempo, and that's one we were working with last time. So when we come over to our Logical Editor, I'll select a MIDI event. Let's go to the Logical Editor, and we will just choose double tempo. And this is an included one, so we don't have to create this. Okay, so once we make this particular Project Logical Editor preset, we could just click right over here, and then we could choose to save the preset. And I just called this have size of event. Okay, and then we have this double tempo, where this is basically going to take the selected MIDI and double the tempo of it. All right, so we're going to do locators to selection. We're going to split the range. So we're basically going to split what we had selected with the range tool. We're going to run this logical editor preset, which is standard with the program. We're going to then switch tools to the selection tool. And then we're going to process the project logical editor. And here we choose have size of event. And once the preset is saved, if you save it under a different name, just look for that particular name. When you go to add commands, at this point we could navigate to the left. We're going to glue those two events together. We're going to navigate to the right. Then we're going to say, we're going to go to transport. We're going to move the cursor to the selection end. Then we're going to navigate to the right. We're going to then move kind of the event that was past the gap. We're going to move that over to the left. So we navigate to the right. We're going to move that event over to the left to kind of to join the two events together. And then we're going to glue the events. So if we just want to assign this as a keyboard shortcut, again, what I could do is just say so when we run the macro, I can say all of these notes are going to be half of the time. And we come here. So once you set this up, you could fire it off from a keyboard shortcut. You could hit a button on your MIDI remote, and we'll just choose to run the macro. And now all those steps will happen just so that now all of the quarter notes here in the middle are now turned directly into eighth notes, and our half notes are still retained. So again, just to run that macro, so it's transport locators to selection, edit split range. We're going to process the project logical editor that's included for double tempo. We're going to switch to the selection tool. This is again the project logical editor preset that we made to have the size of the event. Navigate left, glue, navigate right. We're going to do transport locators to selection N, navigate right again. We're going to move the event to the start to where the cursor is, navigate left and glue, and then we have one contiguous part again. So we kind of chop it, time compress the MIDI, we time compress the event, and then kind of basically glue it back together. So again, just to start with the range tool, come over here, select a range that you want to have the time of the selection, run the macro. So we see here we have our quarter notes, and we have 9 measures or 8 measures. So we run that macro. Those will all change. I could say. So give that a try. Let me know if that's helpful for you. And if you needed to go the opposite way, I could do a different macro to double it for you, Martin, if you need it. Thanks for joining us again, and thanks for sending more information via email to clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right, we see Brian Sawyer joining from Yuma, Arizona. We have Tim Weinheimer joining from Mission Viejo, California. All right, great to see Alexander Plasko back. Says, hi Greg, Cubase 15 Pro, Windows 11. I could create a chord track from audio and it does show up, but not in the score editor, so I can't print it out for lead sheet purposes. Can that be done? Yeah, so we'll show you how. So you may have to just kind of create an empty MIDI part. So let's say if I come over here, we'll activate different project here. All right, so let's say we have So say we have an audio file here. All right, so what I want to do is we're going to go to the chord track here, and we're going to choose to create chord events. All right, and we go to our chord track. We can see our chords laid out for us here. So what I want to do is I'm going to select kind of all of the chord events. I could hit the P key. That will set the left and right locators. I'm going to just go to a MIDI track, double click, and we have kind of just an empty MIDI event. So we have the chord track. I'm going to now go into the score editor. So just hit Control or Command plus R, or go to Score to open Score Editor. And once we've done that, all of the chords will automatically be populated. So once basically you need to create an event. So just create like a blank MIDI event to open up the score editor, and then you could just see all of the chords laid out for you directly there. So let me know if that makes sense for you, Alexander. All right, so Tim Weinheimer asks, Greg, I've got a question using SpectraLayers in Cubase. I use stem separation, Spectral 1 version. How do I rejoin all the stems into one track so that I can now use SpectraLayers 13 stems? All right, so I'm not sure, like if you have, so let's say if, I'll just get to an unmix here. I think I may have a, here we go. All right, so right now, so I'm not sure, it sounds like, Tim, you may have unmixed like, one particular file. So let's say like here, I have kind of unmixed this in advance to save time. So when we come over, so when you have SpectraLayers 1 or SpectraLayers Go is kind of like the latest nomenclature for it, and you go to your modules, you could unmix the vocals. So what probably I would do is just go to the original audio file and do an unmix from the original file. So it could be, so once we do this, it's kind of breaking down the file. So it's not playing back a normal audio file. So if I come over here, and let's say if we just get to the control room, so if I wanted to come over here and just so as we come over here, we could just say, all right, so probably my assumption is if you go into your pool window, so let's go over here to media to pool window and just look at your actual original audio file. I would just drag the original file out and do I would at that point do the full unmix. So when you go to the unmix song, we could come right over here, and now we could just choose like the different parts that you want to unmix right from there. So I wouldn't necessarily try to, join the files back together. You could, but I think it makes sense probably to go from the original track if possible. So if we just come over and, if you wanted to drag out the different tracks, you're able to do that as well. And, just do an audio mix down if you don't have the original file. But if you have the original file, I would do the unmix song process from the original file if possible. I think that would give you the best results. All right, Dallas LaRue is asking, I want to separate the stems from an old mix down and rebuild them in Cubase, but the stems in SpectraLayers always have artifacts and bleed. Can I clean them up in Wavelab? If so, how? Sometimes, what you can do is, let's say, okay, let's come over here. Let's say I'll drag the bass part out. All right, so. So, if we wanted to, what I've seen some people do is to try to take a second pass. I mean, you could go through, once we take our particular files here, I've seen some people do kind of like a second pass where they may go to the audio and choose to bounce selection. And then once they do a bounce selection, that could be a different audio file, and then you could unmix the bass there. But any of the particular files that you see, you could come over and once you're in here, if you see artifacts, you could also just choose to edit out the particular artifacts on just a particular layer as well. So if you say, okay, I just want to come over here, this wasn't in there, we could copy and paste it into different layers if you wanted to as well, to help kind of clean it up. Not all unmixing is, can give different results, on, different types of projects as well. But you could try doing a second pass, or just select the particular layer where you're hearing artifacts, and at that point, just see if you could, when we solo that layer, then you could just do editing on that particular layer as well. All right, so we have Michael Marshall joining from Somerset, UK. Great to see you on. We have Fly V joining from Winnipeg. Beverly saying hi to Tim. Sorry, my chat field jumped. All right, Chris Comstock asks, hey Greg, got great news just about Cubase 15 last night. Wonderful, congratulations. I've been with Cubase since 5 in 2010, upgraded every year since. Thought I'd just let chat know how excited I was. So congratulations, and we look forward to helping you with any other questions that you have on 15. All right, so we see from Martin Bergner says this has gotten more complicated than expected, but it works. So yeah, I may be able to come up with something else, but that would kind of move all of the events around. And if you have problems getting the macros set up, I think I sent you a screenshot, or I think I sent you a screenshot of it. If not, I can just send a quick email, and I'm happy to send a screenshot of the macro. But I'm glad that helped. Took me a little while to come up with that. kind of fun to do. Challenging macros, logical editor, project logical editor, situations like that. So some people do Sudoku puzzles. That's what I do for my neuroplasticity. All right, so we see Vishnu joining from India. Great to have you on. We see Michael Teams from Weatherford, Texas. All right, Bradley Music saying hello to everyone. We see Benny from Sweden. All right, great to see Rasta Nick on. Says, hopes everyone's okay and haven't melted in Europe. All right, Alexander Plasko says, thanks, Greg. Problem solved. Glad it was an easy one. All right, Bradley Music says, in Wavelab, I have a clip on the montage and I've applied the mastering rig, even with my maximize. The audio is at minus 18 LUFS. How can I get Wavelab to adjust the clip to minus 14 LUFS? I hope to also see it in the analysis tab. All right, so let's jump over to Wavelab here. All right, so once you have, like your file, so let's say I will come over here. Let's go to this file here. So this isn't mastered really, but let me just get the audio so you guys can hear. All right, so I'm just gonna, once we have your audio file, let's say you have the effects that are applied to it, you could also just come over here. And we could say, let's go under the process tab. We could say, let's go to loudness. And I could say, okay, let's just set our loudness to achieve. I could say minus 14 LUFS. So again, just come right over here to your loudness, and then you can put in target loudness. And set the value here to minus 14 LUFS. So you could apply that after the fact. So let me know if that's helpful for you, Briley. All right, everyone's happy. Nick is on from Essex in the UK. All right, we see Peter from Montreal on. Michael Teams has granted ice cream to him. Okay, reading through comments here. All right, so we say Tim Weinheimer says, okay, that sounds like a great approach. That's what I was looking for. Thanks, Greg. All right, so we have Rolling Stuff checking in from Sussex in the UK. Just dropped by to say hi. Can't stick around today. We'll catch up tomorrow, and will be with us on Tuesday. See, Chris Comstock says, you've already taught me so much. I'm great now at getting to know it on my own. So that's good. Have fun. Adam Langford was just asking, did you manage to take a look at Vertigo Mosaic yet, Greg? So yeah, I just dived into it. I got my license sorted out today for it. So let's take a quick look. All right, so we open this up. So we have kind of like, 5 different voices that we could blend together. So if we come here, and then what gets to be kind of really interesting is so we could kind of select. So if you want like to add, let's say maybe like a pad sound as a 5th layer here. All right. So then as we come back over here, so now what's kind of interesting about this also is we can come over here and you have like the mixer page, but we could also just kind of come over here and choose like kind of different aspects of it. So if you wanted to go to, so you could put in different layers here. And now if you want to control like different aspects, like with your modulation wheel, we could say that layers 1, 3, and 5 are controlled when I bring in the modulation wheel. So moving your modulation wheel, you could bring in so, and you could also just kind of bring in like different, so as you come over here, you could put different envelopes in. So as you want to bring in different points for like as the volume. So, but once you kind of come over here, you also have kind of friction that you could bring in, or if you want to bleed, and you could think of this as more kind of reverb and tensions for each of the sounds. So we'll go through a couple of different presets here. So kind of like dark, atmospheric. And again, just kind of being able to come here and blend multiple layers and choose a different layer. But let's say we now want this to be able to adjust my volume up. And let's say when I move my mod wheel up, I want this one to decrease in volume and the others to increase. So as you click on the individual 5 layers, you could have different kind of volume envelopes and low cut filters, and what you want kind of your modulation to do in different reverb settings. So, and again, just like really interesting, you know, so just kind of move your mod wheel so you could have different elements kind of increasing or decreasing as you move your mod wheel so that the two sounds can play against each other. And then also just kind of coming right over here and choosing, okay, I want more tension in this sound. So we can play just and get a bit more reverb. And so just playing one note, moving my mod wheel up and down as you see on the controller there. So all sorts of like really fascinating sounds. So you can blend your different layers together creatively, interacting with them with your modulation wheel. And again, kind of come over here to globally change the sounds. So you just get like more bow sound. So perfect for those types of movies. So, but I'll be playing around with it, learning it more over time. But that's a quick overview. All right, Michael Teams is saying Nick is famous. All right, so we see from Batman, it says, why is Cubase not putting money on marketing that much? So there's lots of different forms of marketing. So, you know, so you see a lot, you know, I see different, you know, social media ad campaigns going on. Like we may not do traditional magazine print advertising as much, you know, but we have lots of great stuff going on the website and the community and with the Club Cubase live streams. So there's lots of stuff, you know, currently there's a Wavelab promotion that's going on. So you get Wavelab for 40% off. So there's a lot of focus on marketing campaigns for sales promotions. So currently there isn't a Cubase sales promotion. There was one in April of this year. So you saw a lot more marketing for that. But there's, you know, marketing campaigns go into all sorts of different areas. You see tutorial videos, we see product videos, we do demonstrations in person, we do live streams, and lots of social media stuff, forums, and advertising on Facebook and other social media platforms. So. All right, so we see I've created custom tags in from RKO 7409. I've created custom tags in MediaBay for my own samples. Are these tags included in the Cubase Profile Manager? I'm going to change my PC. So as long as the files, or if you're moving the files over, that metadata is embedded in the files themselves. So, you know, once you add the metadata to the file, if that sample is moved over, like let's say you have all of your samples on a hard disk and you connect that hard disk and copy it over or open up the samples from that hard disk, that metadata is still read because it's actually embedded in the file itself. So it doesn't really need to transfer over as long as the audio file is there. So let me know if that makes sense. All right, so we see Rick from Bratman Studio joining us from oatmeal from Uptown Whittier. He's having oatmeal and streaming. So I just had my oatmeal for lunch today as well. I like the Trader Joe's plain. So let me know what oatmeal you have, Rick. All right, we see John Costigan on from Kenosha, Wisconsin. Ice cream distribution to Rick from Michael Teens. We see Randy Lee Music joining from Texas, Dallas, Fort Worth area. Jazzy's kind enough to share a Mosaic tutorial. All right, so we see Briley Music just says, I don't see a loudness options in the audio montage. There's a meta normalizer, but I couldn't get it to set it to clip to -14 LUFS. Loudness analysis says the track got quieter after the meta normalizer. Yeah, so what the meta normalizer does in Wavelab is often kind of just normalize between multiple, like the relationship between different clips in a montage. So if we were just come over here. Let me just find. Yeah, okay. So let's say if we're here. Okay, so let's say I wanted all of these files here to match the loudness of this clip to give it, let's say, more dynamic range. All right, so when we come over here, we go to our loudness. So let's see. So if I wanted to do my meta normalizer here. Okay, so it could depend on so here I could just do based on clips. So let's say like here, if I wanted to match the level, I could say, match the loudness of the selected clip. So let's come over here. Yeah, match loudness on the active clip. But let's say if we just set this to set specific loudness and we come over here to -14. So now, so when I come over here, I won't select everything, but let's get to the meta normalizer. We want to set specific loudness, and we'll say to -14. I think all of them will now be at -14. So try just doing that. So again, under the meta normalizer, when you go to the clips, say set specific loudness there. Okay. See, Adam Langford says, thanks, Greg. Rather tempted by that. So you got the vertical mosaics. I think all the Vertigo series are just really interesting. And it's, stuff that you would have to spend a lot of time trying to recreate in other tools. Okay, we see from 54 Beatmaker 54, hi, could future updates allow copying a plugin with its attached modulators and mappings to another track instead of duplicating the whole track? So currently, like the modulators are, at the track level. So let's just take a quick look here, close this out. accidentally close Cubase. So, when we're dealing with modulators, the modulators aren't necessarily just tied to a particular plugin, because the modulators can go to different sources. So let's say if I'm here, often we can come over here and, one modulator here, let's say if we're doing this, so I want to, so we have this controlling, let's say, our filter cutoff on the instrument. So we'll just open up the instrument here so we see. But that same modulator could also be controlling the EQ. So let's say this one modulator can go to the instrument. It could go to, let's say, a plugin. Let me open up different. Okay, so let's say if I come over here and I want to automate now the frequency. So that's to the plugin, but let's come over here to the channel settings, and I want to maybe control a compressor. So we will come over here, and so now I want to control the compressor amount. So it's not the actual, modulator isn't just tied to a plugin. It could be tied to channel settings. It could be tied to panning. So if I come over here, I'm going to move the pan knob, and now our panning is automatically adjusted as well. So that's why, the modulators, can control much more than just a simple plug-in parameter. So when you copy it over, that's why it's, handled that way, because the modulators can do, each modulator can do 8 sources. And that could be a plug-in, it could be a channel setting, it could be mute on and off. So that's why it's not necessarily included when you copy the plug-in over. Let me know if that makes sense. All right, so we see Jazz Dude sharing a link to Xtreme, which is a free Xtreme plugin inside of Cubase with a tutorial. All right, so FlyV is just asking, in Wavelab Essential, how to balance the volume of separate tracks. Okay, so I'll just open up Essential here. Okay, so let's open up Wavelab Elements here. Okay, so I have my files here. Okay, so again, let's come over. I think if we go, let's see if the meta normalizer is. All right, so click here under the Edit tab and go to Meta Normalizer. And I'm going to say, let's say I'll select this clip here. And we could just say match loudness of the loudest clip, or we could just say match the loudness of the active clip. So when I click apply, now the level of all the tracks between the different songs on your release or CD or album can be just meta normalized to the same level. So again, make sure you're in the montage. You want to come over here to the edit and then click on meta normalizer. You could set to the loudest clip, to the softest clip. You can equalize clip levels. So a lot of options there. Then just hit apply. All right. See, Bradley Music says Xtreme is really cool. One of the only spectral synthesis options on the market and free. All right, so we see comment from Jazz Dude says Mercedes-Benz didn't have marketing in the past. Guess why? All right. All right, Bratman Studio just says, by the way, Greg, I see lots of advertising for Steinberg products on all my social media, even on TV streaming ads. Could be the algorithm we set for ourselves. Yeah, that's good. All right. All right, so we see Bradley Music says, well, one thing that's concerning after using Wavelab for about 5 or 10 minutes while mixing, the audio starts crackling and gets fuzzy. You have to restart Wavelab to keep it working. It's like a memory leak. So I haven't run into that, and I know some of the best mastering engineers in the world use Wavelab that don't run into that. Let me know like what audio interface you're using and what driver, and if you could share what operating system, all that good stuff, and if there's third-party plugins that are affecting it. All right, so we see Nicholas Finn says, why did my CC121 stop working with the Cubase 15 update? Someone please give me the link to fix this. Couldn't find a Discord channel with Pete from Microsoft. So I don't have any problems. So I have my CC121. It could be, check to make sure, because there's new Windows, if you did a Windows 11 update, but I run it on my Windows 11, so I'm not sure if you need the latest Yamaha Steinberg USB driver for that to work. But when I go to my studio setup here on my Mac on 1503, my CC121 is still set up, so I could, come over here, zoom in, zoom out using my CC121. I can transport. I can, as I move my fader here, I'll move my microphone closer. You can hear the fader respond. But just check, because if you have Windows 11, there's a Windows MIDI services update. So you may just have to update the driver to the latest Yamaha Steinberg USB MIDI driver, but it's working fine. But it could be maybe you have the last generation driver for communication, and that may need to be updated to work with the latest Windows 11 version. All right, Chris Comstock just says, so question, when does the 40% off Wavelab sale end? I think it's maybe July 1st, might be the last day. Maybe, let's take a quick look. All right, until July 1st, 2026, Wavelab. So I would get it the day before. I'm not sure if that means it's ends on July 1st or if that's or if it ends on June 30th. So, but if you're interested in Wavelab, it's a great time to get it. So you can get it from the Steinberg website or from your favorite dealer. They could offer the same discounted price for you. All right, great to see Reed Stefan on. It says, in pitch correction plugin, can the major or minor scale presets be customized? So let's just come over here. That's great to see you on, Reed. All right. So, I mean, we could set, so when you come over here, we could set, I'm not sure if you want to customize it for, so let's say if we come over here to your external, so let's say if we come here to external MIDI scale, so let's say if we, all right, so we come here and we have major, so we can say, okay, I want this to be for D major. I want this to be maybe, let's see if we go to custom scale, if we define. So let's say we go. So say you want to do like pentatonic. So it looks like if you could just come here and click on, so it looks like you could just create your own custom. So let's say, you know, if you, so let me know if that works for you just by going to internal. You could also, you know, base it on the chords from the chord track or the chord track scales as well. But let me know if just when you select custom, so here I just did like an F major pentatonic. Yeah, so if I just wanted like an F major pentatonic scale, we could choose and customize the scale and create your own scale right there. So let me know if that's helpful for you, Reed. Great to see you on. All right, so we see from 54 Beatmaker says also global modulators would be a game changer. I know it will come. It's just a matter of time. So yeah, there's a lot of, you know, potential unintended consequences with global modulators. So I think it makes sense to, you know, do, you know, to kind of keep it contained within a track, and that track could be exported. But obviously we're just in, you know, I would say that the modulators are pretty deep as they are, you know, they're just introduced in Cubase 14, but I think that, you know, we will see, and with 15 we saw a great deal of development with an additional like 4 or 5 or maybe 5 or 6 new modulators and modulation capabilities. So all right, so we see Benny just saying, regarding my question about the percussion kit from the last live stream, I have Groove Agent 6, but it's not listed in Groove Agent. It is visible in the library manager. All right, so if you have So again, when we come over, let's say we go to, we'll open this up. So let's go to, let's say, so I'm going to open up just a blank instance. So we have a blank instance of Halion or Groove Agent SE. So let's see if I come over here, if it loads. It looks like it loads, but you may need the particular. So, but you need to have. So I'm not sure. You mentioned that you have, Benny, that you have the Groove Agent 6, but it's not listed in Groove Agent. It's also visible. So, one thing that you could do if it's kind of not showing up, if you have the full Groove Agent 6, what I would do is maybe just go over to the MediaBay and say, let's go to VST Sound, and you'll probably see the percussion kit or the percussion agent. So percussion kit here. See if it's being recognized in MediaBay, that this folder to the right is checked, and I would right click here and choose to rescan the disk and see if that will make it wake up and be visible inside of your Groove Agent. All right, so you see kind of further follow-up question from Reed Stuff and Music. Everyone check out his videos. He's a great content creator for music production. Says, can the major minor scales be customized without starting from the empty scale? Says, love to add one notes. I think you might just have to put the empty scale in. So let's. So let's say we do like C major. So let's say I have D major here. And let's say so I think you might just have to manually add in the particular scale. So, which probably shouldn't be too hard. So let's say, okay, I'm here and I want to put in, let's say, like a D major with an A flat, let's say. So I would just come over here. So, it's probably not the end of the world just to, enter the scale in once, but when you're customizing, it's going to start from a blank template as opposed to, seeing the major, defining the major or minor. It doesn't kind of carry over into that. So I'll pass that along as a feature request though. But I don't think it's probably that hard to do. All right, so we see Val joining from Vienna. Thanks for being online with us. Hope you're surviving the heat. I was just talking to some friends in Germany today, just who don't have air conditioning. So they were envious of our American houses with have air conditioning, which need like a couple days a year. All right, sorry, my chat field jumped. Find my spot. All right, so we see from Val in Vienna, just says I got resident DJ job here in Vienna since June, so he barely had time to improve on his Cubase. All right. Everyone's happy Val's back. All right, so we see Rick from Bratman Music just says, Greg, are you close enough to DC to see the big fireworks show the government puts on for the 4th? At our house, it was about 6 miles away where we lived before. We could see the DC fireworks from there because we're only about 4 or 5 miles. We have some people on my street. Kind of our street kind of turns into almost like a 4th of July party on our street. So we tend to just do stuff on our street. And some of the dads go a little too crazy. They could go a bit like Homer Simpson-esque with, driving to Pennsylvania. And my next door neighbor, Matt, I think like 2 years ago, he must have dropped like $1,000 on fireworks. And there's like a 3-hour fireworks show just on our street that was just, well beyond what you would expect for like a neighborhood thing. So usually driving into DC is always, in years past, it's kind of like driving to Woodstock Festival, because there could be like 500,000 people there. So it's, I will probably end up just staying, and for us, it's a great time to hang out with the neighbors, and everyone gets together and someone hosts, and someone is just inevitably brings drinks, and someone's cooking hot dogs and hamburgers and stuff and corn on the cob. So it's always a lot of fun. So we'll probably just stay on our street, but I'm just about maybe 10 miles outside of DC where I live now. So if I got on my roof, I could probably see them. Okay, so we see Val after doing DJ says now he wants to get a roll on DJ 202 because there are no DJ controllers from Steinberg. Wink, wink. So yeah, I think we'll see most of the hardware kind of migrate to Yamaha, and software stuff come from Steinberg going forward. All right. So we see from Val says, I want to set up a Cubase project. I can use my output of the DJ 202 as an input. So far, I got it all right. I can monitor and use basic VST plugins. Now I'm wondering how to use the... Let's see if it comes in later. All right, I don't see maybe the end of Val's or Y42's comment there. So it looks like maybe your comment at 53 minutes after the hour may have gotten cut off, Val. So if there's a second part, we'll see if it comes up. But if not, you can feel free to ask again. Right, Rick asks, hey Greg, since Wavelab Go comes with Cubase 15 Pro, I bought Wavelab 13. Will Wavelab 13 come on and replace Go in 15, or do I have to set it up to bring in a new Wavelab 13 I just bought? So I think that it will automatically go to the highest level of license that you have. So instead of like when you like an ARA, or if you do an edit, if you go to your audio menu and choose to, edit directly inside of, where we select an audio file here and edit in Wavelab, that would go to the highest licensed product. So if you only have Wavelab Go, we go to Wavelab Go. If you have Wavelab Pro, it would, when you double click, it would launch Wavelab Pro instead. All right, so we see Nicholas Finn just says, yes, Windows issue for sure, says traffic and Reddit on this. Yeah, so mine, just I didn't have to, I may have had like the latest driver installed on my system. I would try just to, if you haven't downloaded the latest Yamaha Steinberg USB driver, I would do that, and but mine on my Windows 11 just immediately kind of popped up and worked as expected. I didn't have to update anything to make my CC121 work in 15 in latest Windows 11. All right, so we see how do I balance the volume in Wavelab Elements as well. So what I showed earlier what was in Wavelab Elements. So I'll show it one more time if you want to do. So I'll just come here. All right, so we're going to Wavelab Elements 13. So if you have like Wavelab Pro or Cubase Pro and you want to run kind of a lesser version or one of the other versions that are kind of based, just hold down the Alt or Option key. So we'll just create a new montage again. So we'll just show this. Okay, so once we're here, and again, I could just come over here under the Edit menu to the Meta Normalizer, and then match the level of all of those tracks. So great for doing like voiceovers and sound effects, stuff like that as well. But that is in Elements there. Vince. All right, so we see from DAW 76 watt, Cubase Pro 15, is there a way when zooming in on the waveform to see the sample points? Okay. Okay, so let's come up right here, let's double click. All right, let me just go into, so let's say if we're zooming in, when you get to a certain level, we could see kind of the, near sample level directly there. And if we're in the sample editor, so let me just double click here, and we zoom in. There we could actually, so when we're at this level, this gives us an indication like if we have a click or a pop or something like that, that we could, at this level, we could, redraw the waveform if needed. So usually we're not redrawing the waveform on the project window, so that's why it's kind of differentiated between the project window and the sample editor. So you could take one single sample and be able to just affect it like that because we have the draw tool at this level and not on the project window. So let me know if that's kind of what you're thinking. Okay, RKO7409 says, so let's say I have the same exact sample pack on 2 hard drives. I lost data in one in which I did tagging. Will MediaBay remember the tags in the hard drive as sample pack is the same? So generally the actual files, the metadata is in the files themselves. But I think if you want it to do that, if it's the same exact, I haven't tried this, but what I would do is maybe go into like your preferences or into your application data folder. So if we come over here, if you're on Mac OS, you could hold down the Option key and go into your library folder. It's like Apple's afraid you're going to find your library folder without the special trick. And let's come over here to Preferences. All right, so let's just... All right, so let's just make sure. Okay, so we're in Preferences here. And it's similar, but you may have to go into the Application Data folder. And then when you go to, let's say, Cubase 15, there'll be like a MediaBay, Media Defaults, and there's like a and there's like a MediaBay.db file. Let me see if it's outside of Cubase in Steinberg. Yeah, so if you go here to Steinberg MediaBay server in your preferences, you could try copying over like the MediaBay defaults and the MediaBay3.db files. Then I think that might work, but basically those metadata are automatically stored, in the file itself. So if you migrate the files over, but if it's a duplicate of that, you could try just moving that and the MediaBay defaults files over. So you'll see media defaults and then the MediaBay under Steinberg MediaBay server. It may work because this is kind of global. So, but I could test it over the weekend if you want and see between two different computers. But that's where all the information for the MediaBay is going to be stored in this particular file. All right, so you see, okay, so we see from Tim Weinheimer, just comment, says I had to change my drivers. My Cubase was not acting correctly once I switched. It works again. All right, so we see another clarification or comment from Reed, Stuff and Music. It says, the reason I asked is I don't have all my scales memorized, but I usually need something near a major or minor scale. In Autotune, we could choose a scale before customizing instead of an empty scale. Yeah, I mean, I think the scales are pretty easy to memorize, and if you have problems, but if you're in, I'm not sure if you've gotten into Very Audio yet, but let's say if we're in Very Audio, I will come over here and there are editor scales. So let's say I want to come over and I'll just, all right, so say we have D major here, so. All right, so once we've done kind of our tuning here, we can use the editor scale. So let's say, at this point, I want it to be, and there's lots of different scales here. So you may have a scale that automatically fits. So if you're kind of using like the same scale, but you're switching tonality, you could also set up your musical scales. So So here we could probably say, let's see if we can, so once you're here, you could say, okay, I want to do no scale. You could set up the one intervallic relationship. So let's say you want it, to, to add a scale here. So you don't have to necessarily, so let's say we want to do, let's do a C minor. So we can see, okay, this is a, E flat pentatonic. So at this point, there's a good chance that your scale might already be inside of this, but you could, again, just kind of set a scale here. And then if you don't, once you have that pattern set, so let's say, okay, I have this set as, this is my special, Reed Stefan scale. I could just come over here, and that's my Reed Stefan scale in D or F or C. So you could just, once you have that scale defined within Vari Audio, you could just come here as well. So that would probably, could be even faster. But once you have a scale defined, you could just simply switch here, so you don't have to retype the scales for different tonalities or different keys. Okay, so we see Jazz Dude says he's looking for some more deep modulator tutorials. Memento wants people to whack the like button. All right, so we see from Deemster78 says, no question, just here to show appreciation for what you guys are doing over here. Cubase user for over 20 years. Thanks for popping in, saying hello. And thanks for being part of the community. We appreciate you as a customer. Thanks for your loyalty to Steinberg. All right, so we see Benny. It just says, thanks, Greg. Rescan did it. It's nice when it's a one mouse click solution from happiness. All right, thanks for letting me know, Benny. All right, so we see from Flyvy just says my Wavelab Elements 13 seems to be different. I have no way of doing the meta normalizer. So make sure that you're in, first of all, the meta normalizer is going to work in a montage, not in an audio editor. So we can think of the montage as being a way to assemble multiple audio files together. So if you're just in the editor part, you may not see the meta normalizer because you're working with one single file at a time in the audio editor part, but the meta normalizer is kind of, adjusting the relationship between the different tracks. So, and if you want to send me a screenshot to Club Cubase at steinberg.de, I'll keep an eye out for it during the live stream. And I'll be happy to take a look and see, what you're viewing right now, Vince. All right, so we see Val just saying, yeah, AC is a luxury, but with my home studio, I'm one of the few people got one at home, at least have private friends come by more often in summer. Yeah, I had a pool growing up in our backyard, so we had a lot of friends in the summer who would come just hang out at the pool to cool off. But yeah, it's a good thing to help out friends when it's too warm. All right, Jay the Jolly asked question, probably been asked for. Is there a way to merge the MIDI and audio track for a synth like the JV 1080 hardware, or do I need both a MIDI and audio track separate? So they're going to be like separate entities, but one of the things that you could do is, let's say I want to, record them. If you want them kind of, in the appearance of one track, is, let's say, okay, I have my Rhodes here, and what I want to do is I'm going to add an audio track, and its input, I'm going to set it from my track instruments, and let's say from the Rhodes. So I'm going to hit OK. So And what I could do now is I could just put both of these tracks into a folder. Okay, so we will come over here, we'll just make sure both of these are recorded. All right, so we're going to do this. We're going to create a folder. We don't necessarily have to create a folder with group channel. So let's say, okay, I want to do synth. So let's say it's my 1080, whatever. All right, so now when I come over here, I could arm the track, and I'll just go ahead and solo this. So let's say we're playing, and now I want to record. Okay, so now I have one track where I see MIDI and audio simultaneously because this is reflecting what's going on, but they are actually two separate tracks, but I don't have to open that up. So now when I look at this, I could see one event that I can move together where I see MIDI on top and the audio underneath. So what we did is just take this virtual instrument and we set that instrument as the input. So you'll see under VST instruments, we'll see that as the input on the Rhodes. So we can now just have kind of, and this appears to be like a hybrid track, but because what it's a container for both the MIDI and the audio together. So let me know if that's helpful for you. All right, so we see from Jackie Barr, says, is there a plugin or other method to add some kind of movement or sparkle to a bland, droning, low-mid synth pad? Okay, so let's come over. All right, let's just come over to, we'll do a quick synth pad. Just open one in Retrolog. So I'll just go ahead and record some MIDI notes here. All right, so let's say. All right, so if you have a synth pad, so if you want to like change the sound of that, there's a couple of things that you could do. I would maybe, if you come over just to the instrument itself, and let's say, this is where I would use modulators just to make it a little more interesting. So let's say, okay, I want to just take, let's just. So we have different modulator shapes. So what a modulator is, we can think of a modulator as kind of automating automation. So I'm going to come over here. We click on, we have this set for to learn. So let's come over here and just take just our cutoff. So let's take this. So what we're going to do now is as we modulate here, so I can say I want this to increase. And then we could change how fast it's doing that. So again, if we just kind of pop over now. So modulators are great for like just that particular purpose. So let's say I want this to be a whole note, and maybe I wanted to randomize a different parameter. Let's say my envelope here. So again, as we do this, we have the envelope just random, but the cutoff and if you're looking more for like an effect to make it more interesting, like if you don't want to change the sound, then I would look into perhaps, so that we'll go ahead and bypass these modulators. So, and you could stack multitudes of modulators. But let's say I want to come over here, and if I wanted to use like more of an effects-based, like plug-in-based approach, I would go to under modulators, and you have the FX modulator. So we open this up. So let's say, okay, I just want to come over here and let's do a filter. So we could have, I think, up to 6 different sources. So we're gonna say, let's go to a filter, and I want to, say, okay, let's make this half notes roughly. So we'll come over here, and I could have my own shape. And then when we come to kind of like our filter type, we can say, okay, I want this to be, let's say, so we could just kind of come over here and let's just make it random. So now as we play, so we could, just come over here and we could do like all sorts of different side chaining on our filters. So let's say, even as we play here. And let's, and again, if we wanted to just come over, we could say, okay, let's try a different plugin. So, and again, once we come over to, let's say, our different effects, we could say, okay, let's add a pitch shifter. So now we could say, okay, I just want to, as we play, I want to just do, multi-mod, so you could play with different types of parameters and be able to come up with different and interesting results. But I would just kind of start off first with the modulators and, experiment with those, and you could take kind of something that's not so terribly interesting or as interesting as you want and make it kind of, come to life very easily. All right. All right, General Kai Y2K says, I can't export my MP3 audio because you hide my export button. So sometimes when you have like lower screen resolutions, so when you come over here, if you go to export audio mix down, so we'll go to file, to export audio mix down. So, there's some things that you could do to give you more space. But try just to, grab the top. So let's say, you can resize this window. So it probably just needs to be resized. And sometimes you get this when maybe you have a really, low computer resolution. Like the resolution that I'm running on the live streams is 1920 by 1080. And if you kind of move up the window here, I would, if you don't see it, then you could resize the window like from the lower right hand corner. So maybe if you move up, but let us know what screen resolution that you have. And sometimes, people have a really low screen resolution and you just can't see that much. So, but you could, just come over. So let's say if we have this, if we want to, resize from the top. So if you see the top but not the bottom because it's hidden, try resizing like that, and then move from the kind of the top bar and see if your export button becomes visible again. All right, great to see Anton Welling joining from the Netherlands. Gerald Ely from Martinez, California. Sending greetings to everyone. All right, Jason Wood, 9312 asks, hi Greg J from Birmingham, England. Cubase Pro 15 says gear of a UR 842 times 2 UR22C CC 121. So let me know if it's a UR 816 because I don't think there's a UR 842. So this question, why can't I use the Yamaha plugins like Open Reel-to-Reel, 601 EQ, Compressor, Bus Comp? So those plugins, they were sold separately as a pack, but they haven't. And they're Yamaha plugins, so they're done by Dr. K, kind of a legendary physical modeling programming expert at Yamaha, who's since retired. Who was responsible for the original VL1 and then 1994, 1995, something like that in that era. So they came out, so they're Yamaha plugins. So they required the USB-E licenser, and Yamaha didn't update the plugins to work with the Steinberg licensing. So if you purchase the plugins, you would need to use them in conjunction with Steinberg licensing. Some of the plugins also, those plugins came with the AXR interface. So if you have an AXR4U, the USB version, or an AXR4T, then those plugins came with it because the DSP on the AXR featured those particular plugins, but those didn't work with the UR816, I don't think. I never actually got a UR816 to play with. So I don't think that, unless you had purchased those plugins, they will still work as VST3 plugins, but you would need to run them off of the USB-E licenser. And it's kind of the same if you have the Rupert Neve designed Portico plugins. So they still work and run great in Cubase, but you would need to have the USB-E licenser for those to open up. All right, wonderful to see Matt Elston joining us. He's enjoying the best of Cubase with the amazing bi-weekly stream, learning so much. Thanks, Steinberg, and all who contribute to the awesome worldwide experience of the live stream. Thank you for the kind words. It means a lot. And I always appreciate Jazz Dude's efforts. I'm lucky that he's so great at what he does. I appreciate it so much. All right, wonderful to see Sable Winters joining from Bay Area. All right, so FlyV says where I'm at, it says the tracks need the same sample rate. So generally, when working with a montage, it's good to have a common sample rate, just like the project. So be aware that if you put in audio files that are at different sample rates, it could play back at different speeds because the programs can only play back one single sample rate for the clock to be synchronized. So if you have a 48K montage and you put a 44.1 in and it doesn't convert it, that could play back at the wrong speed and the wrong pitch. So make sure that when you're doing a montage that all of the files that you're putting into the montage are the same sample rates, and you could convert them in Wavelab to be a common sample rate format. All right, so you see RKO749 says, thanks, Greg. MediaBay tagging is insane. A lot of people don't know about that. So, yeah. All right, so I think it's Alexander checking in, saying hello to everyone. I just see album, I mean, of course. All right. See, maybe if we get more. And then just see from Alexander, it just says, hello everyone, album, I mean, of course, and it says 10 tracks. All right. So maybe part of your question got cut off, Alexander, if you could let us know. All right, so we have random S9U, S60. In Cubase 16, will you have the ability to copy and paste inserts on a blank slot in Cubase and also be able to change the track icons based on the instrument and not on the type of track? All right, so let's say I come over here. Let's open up my mix console. And we'll just bring this up and look at our inserts. All right, so let's say I have all of these inserts here, and I want to copy them to this track that has no inserts on it. I'm going to select from the inserts here, drag across. So I think if we just come here, thought we could just drag. Let me just. All right, so I could take just a one insert and drag and copy just like that. So if you just hold down the I thought that we could. So if you want to drag the insert, just hold down the Alt or Option key and drag. And there is a way to kind of select multiple ones. So let me just try it here. Those would be selected the header here, but let's see. Okay, so let's say I go to my inserts here. I'll remove this one. And let's say copy, select the inserts here, paste. So yeah, so if you just select the headers here on the mix console, copy, come here, select this header, right click, paste, then all of the effects will be pasted directly over. So again, right click, copy, come to this track, paste like that. So we don't need to wait for Cubase 16. It can already do that for a few versions. All right, the second question, we'll also be able to change the track icons based on the instrument and not based on the type of track. So you could kind of come over here. So let's say, if I go to an instrument track here, all right, so one of the things that we could do is let's come over here. Let's get to my track. Let's see if I need to turn this on to my track control settings. And let me just see if. There's usually like the ability to, let's just see if I'm. All right, so when you want to see the instrument here, you could just see on the routing tab the particular instrument that you have selected. So you could see the icon right there. And let me just, it's usually just like the picture icon in the lower left hand corner. Let's see if I disabled it. Oh, show track pictures. So right click if you don't see it, and then you could just double click right here. You could put, there's a number of pictures that come with it, but there's also user pictures, so that you could, you know, put your own particular, you know, any picture image. So we could do that as well. So we could now, so, but again, if you just choose a particular track, if you have the routing, you can see that the track is automatically there. You could also put your own track pictures, and if you want to, you know, zoom within the track picture, you know, you could come right over here in preview. So if this is going to be your snare, you know, you could come over here and see that. So let me know if that is kind of what you want to do. So it's not necessarily set for the type of track, but if you don't want to have to put the images, so as soon as you select a track with the routing, then you see the little thumbnail of the particular instrument right there. All right, so we see Reed Stuff on Music says, thank you again for all the helpful live stream Q&As. My upcoming Cubase video is going to be a banger with these tips. So yeah, if you want to see like some of the, you know, interesting marketing things that Steinberg has done, you know, check out Reed Steffen's video at Reed Steffen Music. Check out his stuff. He did a wonderful Cubase video not too long ago, and it's always wonderful to see Reed on the live streams. And yeah, Reed does wonderful content. Everyone please check it out. Okay, so we see from Flyv, how can I delete it? It's not even something needed, just keeps popping up. So let me know if that's like the sample rate message. And again, it could be, you know, check to see what the sample rates are of the files, and then you could convert the sample rates of different files if needed. All right, Jay the Jolly says, thanks, Greg. Folder thing seems to be it. So yeah, it's a great little way to see both the MIDI and the waveform together. You can still open them up and edit them independently. All right. All right, so we see from DAW76WA says, regarding previous question about zooming in on sample points of waveform, what you showed is what I want, but when I do it, the points do not show. What did I miss doing? So again, it's going to be in the sample editor. So make sure that like we don't have very audio selected, or that tab open. So now when I come, I just kind of zoom in. So as I do this, let me know if you don't see the dots. Now sometimes I've seen where people only zoom, you know, I was working with Eric Johnson, the amazing guitar player, his engineer at the time, a guy named Rich. And when he zoomed in full, he was like, I could only get like to this level of the zoom. So if it's like your zoom isn't going all the way down, it could be because your project time. So you go here to your project menu, to project setup. Make sure that like your project duration, so here it's 11 minutes 19 seconds 12 milliseconds, but in case we're with Eric Johnson's engineer, when he zoomed in all the way and then it wasn't zooming in near the sample level, at that point he had the project duration set for 24 hours. So if you're zooming in, it's not going all the way. Just make sure that the project duration isn't set for 4 days or something like that. So that could be something that could cause not being able to zoom in. But generally it's in the waveform. If you just kind of keep zooming in, like I grab from the top, hold down my left mouse button and drag all the way down. Now at that point, as we keep going, we see the dots appear, but we won't see that necessarily in the project window, but in the sample editor. All right, so Jackie Bauer says, thanks, those modulators seem cool. Never worked with them before, but I'm excited to try. Yeah, it's a rabbit's hole once you get into it, because nothing could ever be, it's really hard to almost leave things being very static. You always will just kind of put modulators in so many different aspects just to make it a little more interesting. And sometimes the modulators, I find, if you put different rhythmic values, so, you know, maybe this is every measure, but this one is like a dotted whole note, so it's every 6 beats, and something else is every 2 beats, and something is modulating every 3 beats, so that there's patterns, but they're how multiple elements will line up to the patterns will kind of create their own interesting sound as well. So experiment once you get into the modulators, like, okay, everyone could do quarter notes or 16ths, but, you know, try different unexpected rhythmic things as well. All right. See Brian Sawyers. You see Ice Cream Chocolate Chip from Michael Teams. All right. Randy Lee Music's happy to see Sable. We see Soren joining from Sweden. Thanks for being on with us. Glad you figured out your instrument that was changing sounds unexpectedly. All right, so we see Jazz Dude just mentioning, sending a link to how to create a fade in and fade out with just one key. All right, so if you have like an audio file that is, you know, that you want to fade in and fade out, like you want to fade in and then fade out at a certain point. If we grab, so it's, if you don't want to watch the tutorial, which I'm sure is really helpful, but it may be smarter than this, but let's say I have my audio event here. And let's say I want to put a fade. So if you grab the range selection tool and then hit the letter A, then it will fade into the range. And then after the range, fade out from the particular range. So try that. I'm not sure if that's what the video is showing, but if you wanted to do that, use the range tool, and then A, and then boom. So that way we fade in until the selected range of the event. After the range, it'll just do a fade out. All right, we see Alice, Jazz Dude linking to Alice's tutorials. Check those out. Always wonderful to watch her work. All right, so Slynell1 says Cubase still around. Yeah, it's been going strong for, it's in 1989, so around 37 years or so. All right, so we see from Vince, how can I make Wavelab elements from being the audio editor? Okay, so, all right, so let's take a look at Wavelab here real quick. So Wavelab elements, sorry, I'll just start in elements, sorry about that. All right, so when we're working in Wavelab, we could think of like the 2 main editing areas are going to be are going to be like the audio editor and the montage. Okay, so we come here, we can see our audio editor or the montage. Okay, so let's say if I wanted to do a single file, I would come over here and load it into into the audio editor. So we'll say, okay, let me just see if this is playing back with the right interface. Okay. All right, so let's say now we could come over here and, okay, I want to do, let's say, fade out there. I want to, easily come over here. I want to crop just that portion of the file. I could come over here. Let's reverse. So, a lot of kind of just simple like audio edits here. Now, if we want to, of course, we have our unlimited levels of undo, but if we want to apply loudness level, and at this point if we want to change the sample rate on this file, let's just come over here to export audio, and we can say, okay, we could do the name file, and we could say our format, and here we could also if we want to export the whole file, if you need to, convert, so you could render it, you could run it through different. So this is going to be more of the editing. And now when we want to do, let's say, a montage, we could just say, let's go to new, and we will choose an audio montage. And the montage will be kind of the multi track. So we'll say, okay, we'll come here to new audio montage, and here we can make sure that when we create the montage that we're at the correct sample rate. So if you create a montage that's at a different sample rate than the files, that could give you an idea. All right. So now if I wanted to take this file and I could drag it into the montage. All right. And then, so we could, once we're over here, so now I could take multiple audio files and combine them. So let's say I had 2 songs. So I'll come over here, copy, and let's paste. So let's say this is song 1, song 2. I wanted these songs to kind of blend, do a fade between the 2 of the songs as we go. I wanted to trim this mode here to make this end, and I want to do a fade out. So this would be a little more kind of object oriented, so it's not really relying on kind of like a paradigm of a recording studio mixer and effects rack. But we could just easily come over here. Okay, I want this section louder or softer. You just kind of grab the center axis. So a lot of these things we could just do very easily, and then go back and edit the individual file as well. So if we're in a montage, I could generally just kind of come right over here, and then so you could just kind of go back and have montages and the individual files all right here. So think of the edit as for a single file, the montage for assembling multiple audio files. Let me know if that's helpful for you. is saying it's 111 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, so we see from Metian, hi, is there a way to change auto fade settings for multiple tracks at once? All right, let me just open up some quick bunch of audio files here quickly. Okay, so let's see if we can. All right, so if it's this auto fade settings, let me just come over here. All right, so if it's with, so I'm not sure, so these are auto fade settings here. So if we want it to adjust those, we could save these as presets. So once we adjust one of the auto fades, and these are fades that are applied during playback. So you don't see them visually, you don't edit the auto fades. But if we go to actually cut an audio file, so let's say I want that as my auto fades. Okay, so now when we come over here, and if I do a cut and I'm not on like zero crossing point, this will automatically apply a short fade out here, and this one would do a fade in. So once we adjust that and we make that for the project, at that point it's going to automatically be applied to all of the tracks. Now if you wanted the fades to be like as we do like a fade in, fade out on a particular region or an event. So when I come over here and I do a fade, if I wanted that to always be a default, we could just double click here once. I don't have to change it all the time. But let's say I want a sinusoid or kind of a fade in like that. When I hit apply, now every time that I come over here, if we make that our default fade, so again, just come over here, we could say as default. So now every time that I come over here and I move this over, that's our default fade. So, and if I want it to be a straight linear fade, I could just now make that the default. So we could do default fade ins and default fade outs. And those could be independent of each other. So as soon as you do the fade, that could automatically be applied for you. So you don't have to change it for every track. You can just change it globally, and that will carry over to all the tracks as you're working. So let me know if I understood that okay, Median. All right, so we see Flyvy just says, I fixed my vision on volume through Wavelab Essential. All right, Val asks, Greg, if I used a DJ202 now as a MIDI controller, someone used knobs, it works, but gets detected as Apollo Twin X MIDI, even though the DJ202 driver is installed and the Twin doesn't have MIDI. So there may be like an internal MIDI driver. So I'm not sure if you're doing it as a MIDI. So make sure that when you're doing this, if it's kind of as like a generic remote here, make sure that you have the correct MIDI ports assigned here. So sometimes some devices may have an internal MIDI port for, remotely editing something, even if it doesn't have a MIDI interface, and it may transmit MIDI over the USB as it's transmitting audio. It's kind of small data packets along. So make sure that when you're here that you don't have the Apollo MIDI driver configured if you're doing it in MIDI remote, in a generic remote or Mackie control settings, like if you're controlling like maybe a volume knob with the physical knob to do stuff, or if it's used to control parameters and plugins. If it's in the MIDI remote, make sure that when you set up the MIDI remote and you go into the communications, so let's say if we come over here, that this is set for the correct driver here, and in the MIDI remote, that it's not set. So once you go to like your MIDI remote control device, click on the settings and make sure that that is set to like your DJ 202 and not an Apollo driver by mistake. So, all right, so we see Train 43 joining from Suffolk, Virginia. One of my best friends lives there. Thanks for being online. I appreciate having a fellow Virginian on. All right, and we see a follow-up from Val. Says, also, if I select the driver, the DJ202 doesn't get picked up, or should I restart Cubase after each step? So usually once it's active, if it's not getting picked up, make sure that the DJ202 software that driver isn't configured elsewhere. Sometimes when you configure a driver, it may be something take hold of that MIDI communication. So if you configure it as a MIDI remote, like those functions may not transmit, that are defined, may not transmit MIDI, like to record MIDI into the sequencer in Cubase. So make sure that like that MIDI port isn't being sent somewhere that's blocking the MIDI communication from going on. All right, so we see Jason Woods. Says, Greg, many thanks for your reply and answering my plugin question. Much appreciated. We are lucky to have you to answer all of our questions, Jay. So I'm just glad to be able to help. All right, so Beverly needs more cowbells. Someone just has to ask a question. Say, Greg, do a beat with cowbells, and I'll be happy to do it. But just to make Beverly happy, let's just check out cowbells. I'm going to add a drum track. Let's come over and let's go to our percussion. See if it likes this or not. All right, we'll come over here. I'll do a cowbell concerto for Beverly. All right. Adam Langford's also calling for cowbells. All right. Next time I make a beat, I'll make sure to incorporate them. All right. So you see from Flyv says, thanks again, Greg. Really helpful. All right, so you see from Da76 says, regarding the project sample point zoom, thank you. As a project sample time, once that was changed to sample point showed. All right, let's just take a quick look. So if we come here, let's see if we change our main timeline here to samples. Yeah, all right. All right, so we see from Michael Team says, thank you, Greg, for all you do for us. We're learning so much. 1 gallon of strawberries and cream ice cream for you and the family. It says, you are Yoda of Cubase. I'm sure there's lots of people know Cubase better than me, but I just try to be able to help people. But thank you for the ice cream. I appreciate it. All right, so we see from Median says, thanks for explaining. I didn't mean normal fading or changing the auto fade settings. I mean, most of the time I want specific auto fade settings for specific tracks. Is there a way to change the auto fade settings of multiple tracks at once? So I don't think, okay, you don't want normal fading or changing the auto fade defaults. And this time I want specific auto fade settings for, so when you say to change the auto fade settings, like, all right, so you don't mean normal fading or changing the auto fade setting. So what type of fade do you want to be applied? So if it's not the normal kind of event fade or the auto fades, so then I don't understand. Sorry if I'm being dense about this, but is there a way to change the auto fade settings of multiple tracks at once? So maybe if you could clarify what that is doing. All right, so we see for Alex, see Beverly says, ooh, the cowbell. All right, Alex from Mojave, Arizona says, hi gang, when I move the lower controller section of the key editor out of the way so I could see the MIDI moving fast, when I return to track from elsewhere, it doesn't remember my previous move. Thanks. All right, so let's take a look. All right, so I jump here. Okay, when I move to the lower controller section of the key editor out of the way, so let's say I will just hide the controller lanes. Okay, so I can see the MIDI when moving fast. When I return to track from elsewhere, it doesn't remember my previous. So let's come over here. Let's say I go to the sample editor. I'll go to another MIDI part here. All right, now let's come over. So it looks like that when I closed the editor window, that automatically kept it on that particular track. When I go to, let's say I go to this track and I want to see this and modulation data. All right, so here I'm there. Let's go to the sample editor. I go back here. Those are two. Let's go back to the cello part here. And there's, when I double click here, we should see no controller lanes. So it looks like that is keeping the controller lane. So it's not going to be global. It's going to be on a track by track basis. So let me know if you, because you may have different controllers for different instruments that, control the appropriate MIDI CC messages, so you may want to see it on one instrument and not on another. But let me know if you're expecting it to, like that setting to be applied to other tracks, but that's going to be applied to that specific track, which I think makes sense. All right, Jazz Dude says our cowbell needs shimmer, reverb, and lots of it. Got to give it a try. All right, so let's come over here real quick. Right. All right, and run the shimmer reverb on it. That That is pretty cool, I have to say. All right. That's a good ear candy hook for a song. So Jazz Dude's onto something. Very wise man. Michael Team says, ha ha ha, cowbell concerto. So Michael can't play too loudly at his house because at the ranch, the animals may go crazy with it. All right. All right, so we see Randy Lee Music. Just Tom Bryan says, just saw you're in a hospital. Hope you're getting out soon. Prayers. So yeah, you'll be in our thoughts. Sorry if I missed that. Get well soon so we could see you on Tuesday's Zoom social. Michael Team says he has a cowbell concerto and the bovines are running in the west pasture, more like cowbell cacophony. Right, Rick is just saying, hey Greg, don't we have a Zoom on the next Tuesday meet? So yeah, it'll be on Tuesday, starting at 3 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time, so usually 2 hours into the live stream will be our Zoom social meetup. Okay, so maybe I have clarification from Median. Sorry if I'm being obtuse on my end. It says, I'm not trying to change the global auto fade defaults. I mean the per track auto fade settings you open up from the small icon on the left track inspector. All right, so let's come over here. All right, so I see these as the auto fades setting. All right, let me just see. As far as I can see, it only enable auto fade in, fade out, auto crossfade either globally or track by track. But if I want to make them only for the 3 selected tracks and not for the quick link, doesn't work, for example. So again, I think, let me just see if I adjust this. All right. All right, so let's see if I come here. So if it's this, you can see that that is global over there. So if I change this now and I come up to this track and we adjust the auto fade settings, we can see. So you said it was from the inspector, just the per track auto fade settings you open up from the small icon in the left track inspector. So if it's this one, this is still global overall. So let me know if I'm mistaken, if it's this one or if there's another icon. Sorry about that, misunderstanding on my part. Michael Team's giving Jazz Dude kudos for the cowbell trick. Okay, we just see Median just says a quick link doesn't work, for example. So, quick link wouldn't work if that setting is going to be global for all of the tracks. So. All right, so we see from Alex, says, thanks, I see the track remembers the hide function, but let's say I lower the 4 dashed line bar, and then when I return to it, it jumps back up to a default setting. Can this default reset be avoided? Okay, so let's come over here back. Thanks for the clarification, Alex. Okay, so let's say modulation, let's add velocity. All right, and let's say main volume. Okay. Okay, so it's this line, I think, that Alex is referring to. Okay. Okay, so it sees track command is a hide function, but let's say I lower the forward dash line bar. When I return to it, it jumps back up to default setting. Can this be avoided? Okay, so let's say we lower this down. Okay, we could do this for each controller lane. Okay, now let me come to this part. And let's say I just want to see just my modulation here. Okay, so we lower that. Let's get back to our cello event. So I think that's the same. Let's go up to this one. I'm going to raise it to see if it's recalled. See if this is high. I'm going to raise the middle controller lane here to make the middle controller lane, and these will be at kind of their smallest height. Go back up here, we should see one tall. Go back, just like this, and we can see that this is taller than the other two lanes. So it looks like it's preserving the height for me. When you turn, it jumps back to default setting. Can this default reset be avoided? So it looks like, let me know if yours is behaving differently than mine, but mine seems to be retaining. But let's see if what happens if there's another event. Let's see if it's on an event by event basis. Or if it's based on tracks. So now when I go to, yeah, so it looks like the tracks are retaining. So it's not like an event by event position, but again, over here, one tall. Then these will all be the same. I'll make the velocity lane taller here. And let's go to this event. We can see that's carried over on the track. And when we come here, we double click. So it looks like that's retaining it by default on the tracks, but let me know if it's working. All right. Suggested just says any ping sound works great with huge reverbs and resonators, delays. This is the secret of ambient music, especially like early Pink Floyd. Yeah. So you see Brian just says it's Zoom today or Tuesday. So Tuesday will be the last day of the month. You see Brian's on pain meds. We hope you get better. Okay, so we see from Median just says auto fade settings, but not default fade settings. You could change those settings for specific tracks only by deselecting. Uses project settings on the right side of the menu. All right, so let's take a look. thanks for your patience. All right, so let's see. Okay, so let's see, we do use project settings. Let's come over here to that track. Okay, now it's going to be not global. Yeah, because usually quick link is going to be more for kind of parameters, but I don't think that there's a way. And thank you for your patience in explaining it to me here. Come over. So usually quick link will be for, like, you know, automatable parameters. But let's see if we group the tracks together. I don't think this will work, but we'll give it a shot. So it's link. All right, so now I think we could group the events together here. So now when we yeah, it looks like they're all going to be set kind of in the same manner. Sorry about that. I'll make a note of that to pass it along. All right, so we see Alex says, yes, it's retaining it, but yesterday for some reason it wasn't. Very Twilight Zone-y. All right. All right, so we see Val just says, oh, wow, today I have an unbelievably high latency. You know, one thing to check with your latencies, you know, if it's like particular plugins that are causing it. You know, if you come over to the mixer and you like right click and we go to set up sections, you can go down to the channel latency, make sure that that is checked, and then you could just kind of scroll through your channels here and you could see any channel that has plugins that cause latency. I'll just drop some in here. Then we could see that latency indicated directly here in the latency field. So if you have like a lot of latency on particular plugins, you know, check the channel latency right there in the mixer, and that will show you, indicate all the latency of the various plugins. So we'd say, Val just saying, oh, it wasn't specific latency on the live stream on YouTube. All right. All right, so let's go to a couple questions that were mailed in advance. All right, so we see question, what are the best techniques for exporting audio into a video file? Okay. Okay, let me just open up a quick project here. All right, so there's two different methods for doing this. So let me just open this up. Okay, so let's say if we have like a video project going on here. All right, so once we get hit F8 and open up the video here. So this is at the Steinberg office in Hamburg. So cool building, all those top 5 floors there. All right, so if we have an audio, so let's say we've been scoring to video, and now we want to take the audio that we've done for our project and put it back into the video. All right, so there's two different thoughts of this. One is to replace the audio in the existing file. So we'll come over to so first things we want to do is just make sure that as we're working with this, that we have our left and right locators set for the video, and we'll come over here and we'll say export export video. So this is going to take the project, and again, we could choose to replace the audio in the video. So sometimes video could be a little different because video has things called codecs, which makes it work. So that's a compressor, compression, and decompression. So codec, compression, decompression. So unlike standard audio files, which most of us are pretty familiar with, that will play back in any system, a WAV file could be played back in any system that plays a WAV file. A video file may have a container and a codec. So, and there could be a myriad of options. Now, sometimes someone may send you a video that's kind of a small size. Maybe it doesn't look amazing, but it's good enough for you to score to picture. And if you're doing that and you want it to keep the same exact file size as the original file, what you could do here, if you choose replace audio and video, that will take the same exact video and basically take the audio, exported audio, back into the file itself. So that way the video is unaltered and the audio has been replaced. Now what it doesn't do with that is if there were different edits in the video. So let's say as you're working, every film composer loves the term picture lock, meaning that all of the video edits are done and they're not going to change it. Inevitably, there's always going to be a change to the video, and they may come back and say, we cut out these frames, we cut out 1 minute 17 seconds 32 frames to 1 minute 18 seconds 24 frames, and you may have to go in and edit and cut the video and then score to the edited video. Now when that happens, the replace audio and video file isn't going to work because it's going into a different video file. In that case, what we could do is say render new video. Now as we render the new video, it used to be in previous versions of Cubase until 1502 that it would give you a great looking video file, but it would be sometimes a very large file, one that wasn't as easily shareable. So Steinberg went with, okay, we wanted to be a great looking video file that you can share, but sometimes people found the file size to be too large to share. So a video that may have come in as like 200 megabytes may have left as 2 terabytes. So if you didn't do any edits, you could do the replace in video file, and then the video would be the same size. But now if we have done edits, we could come over here and we could choose to render a new video file. And with this, you could have your encoder preset, so you could have it to be specifically set for small file size, but still have the video look really good. You could have it, for balanced, high quality, so you have different kind of encoder presets and different video display resolutions. So if you want it to be HD, Ultra HD, so the higher the resolution, the higher of the codec, or the encoder preset can give you larger file sizes, but now you could adjust that there. So if you don't need to do any changes to the video, you can do the replace audio in video. And if you're kind of exporting to an edited video or just a portion of the video, so let's say you get 7-minute video, but you're only scoring 3 minutes, you could just simply render the 3 minutes of the video and not the full 7 minutes. So when we do the render new video file here, and again, since 1502, different resolutions as well as different encoder presets, so that you could deliver a smaller high quality video or a larger size high quality video with less compression on the video file itself. All right, let me jump back to see if we have more questions. Yep. All right. All right, so we're just seeing latency discussions of the video streams. All right, so we have Rodri Salub, W2N, says, excellent content watching from Mexico. Thanks for joining us. All right, so we see Vince says, thanks for all your help with Cubase plus Wavelab, Greg, and everyone. All right, let me jump back to another mailed in question. Okay. We did that one. All right, so we have a question. Hello, Greg. Why if I import some music into Cubase 15, it doesn't register the tempo it is, instead of all the tempo dots in the third? Cubase default is 120 beats per minute. Shouldn't it register that it is, in my case, was 85? Can't they change that? It's annoying. All right, so let's say, so I don't think that Cubase should change the tempo based on imported audio files. Now, if you're doing it once and you know what the tempo of the audio file is, you can easily change that. But let's say I go through loops here, and I'm looking for loops to audition with, so I'm going to come right over here. Let's go to, so I'm just looking for some different loops. Now, when I put this loop in, this loop is 60 beats a minute. That loop is 129 beats a minute. So every time that if the program automatically put the audio file in at its origin tempo, anytime that you inserted audio, the tempo would change. So if you work with loops, it probably doesn't make sense to have the program automatically, set the tempo from the loops. So what most people want is the audio files to all work together. So if you automatically, have Cubase change the tempo based on the, tempo of the loop, anytime you insert or based on the tempo of the audio file, anytime you would insert a loop, the tempo would change. So most loops will have varying tempos, and what most people would do, when working with loops is just, to make sure that they're in musical mode as you drop them in. so that they comply with the project tempo. Now, make sure also that you're, so at that level, I don't think it makes sense to have Cubase automatically, change the tempo based on any audio file that has tempo metadata in it. So that's why you have musical mode, where you could have it fit your current project tempo. But there's lots of bad consequences anytime you put a loop. If you put in 4 loops in your project, you don't want your project tempo changing. So there's a lot of bad things that could happen if that were the case. Okay, next question. Oh, Greg, Wi-Fi import. So it says, also I brought an audio file at 48K. Cubase defaults to 44.1 and then prompted me also asking about the bit rate. Oh my God, defaults are okay, but I don't know. So let's say if you're bringing in audio files that are different sample rate or different bit depth, you can have those automatically convert to the project settings, and it's usually just a quick setting. So if we come over here, let's go to my Cubase preferences, and we'll show this to you. You may get this window that pops up when you go to editing audio. It says on import audio files, and then if you just click right here, convert to project settings, and copy to project folder if necessary. That way, anytime if you put if your project, Cubase doesn't have a default. It's just the default audio sample rate of your, it's the sample rate that's set in your project. So when you go to project settings, you could change the sample rate. So Cubase doesn't have a default. Just it will use the sample rate of whatever you're using. So your audio interface may have a default. Some may default to 48K, some may default to 44K, 44.1. So, but if you don't want to see the prompt every time you drag in a file that's a different bit depth or different sample rate, just go to your preferences, to editing, to audio, and at that point you could say convert to project settings. And then usually when you get that window, you could just set it there and then say, don't show me again. And every time you import a file from a different sample rate, it'll just convert it for you automatically, so you don't have to worry about it. All right, so we see, hi Greg, is there a beat detector in Cubase 15? I never see it in the project menus. All right, so I'll just throw. All right, so I'm going to drop this into my project here. All right, so we want to find out what kind of the original tempo is of this file. All right, so if it's going to be kind of a loop based project, so let's say if I'm here, I'm going to just listen to and figure out how many beats there are. So say 1 2 3 4 2 2 3 4. So we have 8 beats, or sounds to me like it's in 4/4, just counting. So if we just double click on this, we could go to our definition and we'll say this is 2 bars. Our signature is 4/4. So now we can see that our tempo is 128 beats per minute right there. So I could place that into musical mode. And as I change my tempo here, I will just copy that several times as we play. So I'll go from 140 to 100. Let's go to 120. 160. So if you're looking for the tempo of a loop, just double click on it. and then just go into the definition, and you could set the number of bars if there's an extra beat. So if it's 2 bars in 1 beat, like 4/4 plus 1 beat, then you could automatically calculate the tempo right there. And it says, next question. Will you go over fluctuating beat corrected to click track again? It seems like it's difficult, and developers should make it easier. All right, so if we have an audio file that's fluctuating consistently in tempo, we will come over here. I have an example in this project. Okay, so let's go ahead and listen to this. And so I put on my click track. So what I need to do is to come here, go to my project menu. Let's go to project tempo detection. So we'll go to our tempo track. And this will add like a signature track as well. So I'm going to come to my signature track, and we'll just say, okay, this is in 4/4. All right, and I'm just going to I'm going to move this to where our downbeat is. All right, so move that to be here. Let me just... All right. All right, so now we have our tempo detected, and what we're going to do now at this point is select the file, and we need to basically apply all of those tempo changes that we have here as metadata into the files. So we'll come right here. So we go to your audio menu to advanced, and we say set definition from tempo. And now I could just go to my tempo map here, say, okay, let's have it play back at 120, 132. Now we could have this playback steady tempo. So after doing the tempo detection, so you want to go to your project menu, to tempo detection under tempo track, then select the event or events, go to advanced, set definition from tempo for the audio, and then all of the tempo changes are embedded in the event so that you could just simply have it automatically conform to the project tempo. All right, let me jump back to some live questions here. Thanks for all the great questions. Again, you can email questions in advance to clubcubase@steinberg.de. All right. Reading through some comments. All right, so Val just says, glad to get this project going again. I've been only in stage. Happy to find some time for Cubase, especially in autumn and winter again. Let me see, Val just says, some Austrian has to win the World Cup. I watched the Austria-Argentina game. All right, so we have Perceptive Audio as a question. It says, I work with audio tracks that have lanes from cycle recordings moving The event only moves the top layer while the rest of the lanes stay where they are. How do I move them all together? All right, so let's just open up project here. Okay, so let's say I have my lanes for this project. Let me just... Okay, so let's say when I come here, I move this over. All right, so if I want to move all of the lanes with the events, I could just select the lanes if they're visible, and now they all move. If the lanes are closed, I move the event. We open the lanes. They all move with the particular event. So let's say if I just move... So if they are open, you could just simply select and move like that. Or if the lanes are closed, I'll just copy, and now we could open up and all the lanes are copied like that. All right, next question. Can you unpack lanes to new tracks? All right, so the trick is if we come over here, we'll open up our lanes. I'm going to select the lanes here like this, then right click, and we could say create tracks from lanes. So select all the lanes, and now we have new tracks. So we'll just come over here and we could unmute these. Hit the right modifier key. So now they are, each of the lanes has been copied into its own track. So again, just come here, select the lanes. You can hold down the shift key, select the top lane, hold shift key, select the bottom lane, right click, create tracks from lanes. And now they're all independent audio tracks. All right, just read some comments. You see some World Cup discussion. So Michael Teams thinks that the U.S. is famous for partying, and Val is in discussion with Val, and Val just says, I would say partying, but definitely for big shows, and that for partying he would visit Pablo in Spain. All right, so we see Vince says, I'm off, got to go shower before I visit his friend. Great to see you. Thanks for joining us today. You just see the Scottish people are having lots of fun in the United States in a World Cup. And Val says, never drink with a Scot, never bargain with a German, never fight with a Brit, and never owe money to the Swiss. It's good knowledge. Thanks for sharing your insights. All right, let's see if we have more questions that sneak in. Make sure we're done with all the questions that were mailed in. And then let me just take a quick look. Yep, all mailed in questions answered. We'll see if there's more questions that come in. Give it another 30 seconds or so, see if we have more questions. Probably lots of people trying to stay cool in Europe and people in America trying to go out and enjoy summer. And once again, 2 quick programming notes. Tuesday will be our Zoom social meetup. So look forward to, and that's just a way to meet other people kind of in a Zoom format that are on the live streams. So it's always great discussions. And next Friday, we'll be observing, it's kind of the holiday, the Friday before July 4th holiday. So we won't have a live stream next Friday. So we'll have like a 2-hour live stream on Tuesday. And that will be followed by, then the next live stream after that will be Tuesday. And it might be July 7th. All right, let's see if there's... Michael Team says he's still fiddling with Groove Agent. I see Capital Razor says thanks, Greg. And Adam Langford's wishing everyone a great weekend. All right, you see Val says probably have maybe more questions for the next live stream. All right, Beverly Beatty's checking out till Tuesday. Give it another minute or so, see if there's other questions. Sometimes we have people popping in late. All right, well, it looks like we are out of questions. Thanks for all the great questions from everyone. I hope that everyone has learned some new tips and tricks. Make sure you pass them on to your friends and people you know that are running Cubase, and make people that aren't running Cubase, you can make them jealous with what we're doing here and all the great stuff you could do with Steinberg software. With that, we will go ahead and wrap up. Everyone, please... all right, just a quick question. I am Andrea Hoxa says, is it true Cubase is a standard for K-pop industry or the most used music software in South Korea? So I've never been to South Korea, but that's what I hear from a lot of people. I know my friend Teddy Riley, who's kind of a well-known R&B, creator of New Jack Swing. He's done a lot of work in K-pop stuff in Korea, and he's told me that, Cubase is everywhere there. So I think Cubase is very popular for K-pop music. All right. All right, so I guess we are out of questions. With that, we will go ahead and wrap up. Everyone, please stay safe and healthy. If you're experiencing a heat wave like in Europe, please stay cool, hydrate, and we'll have a great time seeing everyone on Tuesday's live stream. We'll wish well wishes. We'll all send well wishes to Brian Sawyer, so we could have a great time catching up with him, learning about his studio on the Zoom social meetup. With that, we will go ahead and say goodbye and see everyone back on Tuesday. Thank you very much. Goodbye.